Hello, welcome to another Happy Melly coffee session. We get together periodically to discuss questions on a variety of topics related to Management 2.0, employee engagement, and happiness. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let's just go around the virtual room and say hello. Ryan, where are you calling in from today?
Hey, I'm calling in from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Nice. Pick the next person.
I see Jurgen next to me on my screen, so we'll go straight to the man.
I'm calling in from Brussels. Last day at home before a big 6-week book tour in the USA.
Yay.
Next one, Sarah.
I'm in Orlando, Florida. And Catherine?
Yeah, I'm in New York. Well, it would be nice, Jurgen, if you come to New York, it would be nice to see you.
Actually, well, this is going to be out of time for YouTube when you watch it, but he's in New York this week on Thursday. I'll send you information, Catherine.
Great, thank you so much.
Cool. And then Mike is our last person.
Yeah, Mike, where are you from?
Center of Europe, Vienna, Austria.
You're in Vienna right now.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think there is another colleague joining us. I'm heading over to Giovanni.
Giovanni.
Yeah.
Hey, where are you calling from?
Hi everybody.
Hi.
Hey, where are you calling from, Giovanni?
From Milan.
Milan. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Oh.
it's the first time for me for Happy Melly coffee.
Awesome. Well,
Welcome.
thanks for joining.
Yeah, great to have us. Great to have you joining us.
Thank you.
So that's the introductory round. We have 3 people from Europe and 4 from the US. That's nicely divided across the Atlantic. And we have a question from Catherine that she can explain if she wants. I'll read it out briefly, but then she can explain the question further. The question is, how can we use games and tools with customers? That is the question that she asked for Happy Melly Coffee. So I'll switch to Catherine and just ask you to explain the question a bit.
Yeah, so I just feel that in a majority of cases, I can't use these tools and techniques with a customer because maybe it's too playful. At least I perceive it, like to play it with a customer. However, when we have it within a team and we do not have it with a customer, we have some kind of conflict. That the team and team spirit is going in one way and customer is not involved. So it's interesting if anyone has this experience actually. And if not, like, what are your ideas where I can start?
Okay, so let's try and see if we can further elaborate or improve on that question. Because if you ask, how can we play games with customers, then I think, well, I played games with huge number of customers. They were in my workshops and they were at conferences and etc. So that makes me wonder, why does Catherine have a problem where I didn't find one? So apparently we're talking about different kinds of customers there. So can you clarify, is it that coaching and consultancy specifically?
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Actually, let's say my situation is that we're developing products in collaboration with other companies. So like they ask us to help us and we are providing them with software development services. And I would love to play games with people on their side. And I feel afraid about it. Maybe I'm wrong. So if like everyone say, like, it maybe the next question is, have anyone in our like today's coffee actually played with their customers and what were their experience? So maybe we can switch my question to that one. What do you think?
Okay, good. So Andy, I think you raised your hand briefly. Is there something that you wanted to add?
You covered it. It was mostly, what do we mean by customers? Because in your case, Jurgen, there are people coming to you for engagement, education. With Catherine, it's more like a contractual thing. I'm curious what other people mean when we think customer.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So, has anyone have a similar issue that they found with playing games with customers, as Catherine mentioned, or do they have different kind of customers and different kinds of issues with games?
So for me, I can say when I speak to a customer, there's different layers. So there's the external. I work in the healthcare, the clinical space. So my paying customers are typically hospitals or hospital networks or learning universities, clinical universities. My other customers are internal clients, stakeholders to our process improvement, some of our internal apps and such. We have most definitely leveraged some of the exercises for internal customers, and not just for the sake of playing the game and building the network, which some of these events such as like the guilds or the exploration days foster, but actually to take the work culture that we're trying to build and start to scale it so that we're actually bringing in those outside or those other internal clients and those internal customers that we have to start building relationships, to start building a common syntax so that we're all saying the same things, but also to create a new way of engaging with others that we may not have engagement with otherwise. So I know specifically with my activities in the last 12 months, we've explicitly done guilds, and we've explicitly done exploration days here, which I was happy to be a co-chair for both.
Okay. Okay. And but guilds and exploration days, to me they're more like practices and less like games such as moving motivators, delegation poker and such. Right. Catherine, do you see a difference there between different kinds of practices? Is it like the typical game playing things like delegation poker that are more difficult for you than exploration days and guilds, as Ryan mentioned, to discuss those?
Well, actually, I have plenty of questions to Ryan now. So, interesting. Well, first of all, do you think you can like at some point bring it to the outside customers, because this is what is important for me, because when I talking to internal customers, I can persuade them. When we're talking about guys who are completely out of our company with a different culture, so the question is, how can I, when I need to work with other companies as a team, how can I build like shared culture with them? Because this is my goal. And it's interesting whether we can make some guilds or exploration days together and how this may look like. I also would love to play, for example, delegation poker. And if someone have example with it and just like a success story, I would love to hear about it. But for me, it's interesting when I'm talking about my team, or at least my company, it's easy to me to understand how I can start to change culture. When I need to change culture of another company, then there's the question how.
I'm curious.
Okay.
I have some questions. If you're in a supplier relationship with an outside customer, after you do a delivery, do you have a retrospective of the project?
Yeah, sure. Actually, we have a retrospective even before, like on a regular basis. Or
I'm thinking there's opportunity there to begin to introduce some of the workouts or the games. For example, do an improv retrospective, or something else that begins to socialize the concepts that you're trying to communicate. If you're feeling difficulty, going full blast, can you take a little piece, right? Okay,
this might actually work. Thank you. Maybe retrospective is a good point to start. I also think maybe delegation poker might be good if we feel any problems with responsibilities. Then we can take, let's on retrospective try to use this tool and see if it works for us, right? Okay.
I was wondering what Mike's opinion is on this, because I think Mike has insights both leading workshops but also working with customers directly. So Mike, do you have any ideas or suggestions on how playing games is different in different contexts and how you approach that?
Yes, I mean, first of all, I can share. I mean, my context is basically always customers. Usually, it's always customers. I mean, there's always some kind of exception, but you know, either it's about training something, running workshop, or you know, working on change or transformation. And I've been using games since many years now. And you know, the question is actually, what do we mean by game? For me, game is actually kind of, you know, a tool which helps us, you know, us as coaches or them as customers or the people who are collaborating to build a metaphor and use some kind of, you know, tool to start, you know, gaining different perspectives, start to collaborate, start to playful, you know, become creative, and so on and so forth. So interesting enough, nobody has any problems usually with that. So, you know, you don't have to drop in the term game, but you can come up with a rich variety of, you know, potential tools for a given context. This will always be different. So what problem do you want to work on? What problem do you want to solve with your customers or teams, whomever? There is a lot of resources out there. I started with innovation games because you name it. You know, Luke Homan wrote this book, I don't know, years ago. Another one is from Dave Gray, which is Game Storming. So another one which actually builds a wrap around innovation games too. And you can use it in any situation, whether it's about products, whether it's about innovation, whether we want to talk about how could a product look like, what would it need, what would a customer need, and so on and so forth. How could we enrich collaboration, and so on and so forth. Another one is Lego. Lego is being used, you know, it's a tool our kids use. We used when we were kids. And it's being used heavily nowadays because Lego started using it when they were into strategy discussions. And they suddenly figured out, hey, we used our own product for discussing our strategy, and came up with the idea we could make it a product. And since then, since many years, there is something out there which is called Lego Serious Play. And there are a couple of people out there using that. And just for an example, friends of mine are doing that in Germany. I can advertise a little bit. Strategic Play, their company is called. And they're using this with boardrooms, people in big, large groups. And even they told me about a story with the German military. So the military guys got together talking about their, you know, future strategy, how they will run their systems, and so on and so forth. So they used Lego, you know, for coming up with these metaphors, bringing people's minds together, you know, to something which is physical, touchable, tangible to the table. And then suddenly people, you know, question it anymore. And a final one, that's the interesting one. We all have been kids someday, obviously. And we didn't have any problem with playing. And some of us have kids, so we don't have any problem playing with them. So it's very rare in my experience that anybody ever resisted or refused to touch these things. Even vice versa, when I do a Scrum training and you unpack these Lego stuff to run a simulation, people get really, really excited, and they prefer it over, you know, running normal discussions or normal exercises or running something via slides or flip charts. So it's quite interesting to understand what could you use it for. There's a wide variety out there, wide variety of sources. And then comes the question, okay, what about yourself? So now you might ask, okay, there are all these sources. Do I dare, or what is my fear jumping on this wagon?
I like the suggestion, Mike, that it's sometimes in the language that you use can be important. It makes me remember someone who said, "Don't call them games, call them simulations." And you said they are tools, and many managers and traditional people love tools and tooling, etc., and they shy away from the word game, but we mean the same thing, perhaps. So use tools. And instead of playing, we can use the word exploration. And instead of change, we can use the word experiments. So the words can be very crucial in order to neutralize the people's defense mechanism, because they have certain preconceived ideas with certain words. The word game makes people think of Monopoly and Settlers of Catan, and yes, they're perhaps not very interested in playing that in the organization. But everyone loves tools, so good point.
Can I have something?
Sarah, yeah.
I wanted to affirm Katherine's, just, I guess, basically show some empathy for that concern, because it does make you really vulnerable to bring in something that's so different to typical businesses that are used to, doing serious work and PowerPoint slides and all of that. And you bring in a game, and you do have to feel a measure of confidence and willingness to kind of stick your neck out, which is a little scary. So in my mind, it does take some courage to say, this is a game or a tool, or this is outside of what you're used to, but I've seen it to be effective. I've done this before, and I need you to trust me that this is going to help us accomplish our goal. So I think especially with traditional business, it's just so crazy to them when I show up with my Legos and my cards and, all of that stuff. So it does require a modicum of just courage and just putting yourself out there and recognizing that it can fail. People might think that you're completely nuts and that this is a terrible idea. That will happen, and you just have to rise up and learn from it, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And also, I would say sometimes you just have to take a stand and say, okay, well, I'm different, I'm remarkable, this is how I work. And that is why you hire me in the first place. I was reminded of that just 2 weeks ago when I did my speech at the Raleigh event, the Try Agile conference, where someone afterwards came up to me and said that he found it so awesome that I used such a colorful management book that even included the color pink. And I hadn't really consciously thought about that, but apparently that was special for some people. So I said, well, yeah, pink is just another color. I like pink sometimes, and sometimes I like blue. And sometimes I like other colors. I use them all. I want to express that as a very colorful approach to management. So why ignore pink? And he liked that. But it also at that time, it made me realize that, okay, well, for some people, it might be off-putting that there is one of the chapters is pink. And yeah, that's just the way it is. It means that I'm not going to remove the pink color. I said, no, this is part of the branding, of the language that I use, because some people need this language as an alternative to the language that they have been using. So coming back to you, Sarah, yes, sometimes you just have to have the courage and take a stand and say, well, I use games. That's the way it is. Take it or leave it. You need it. Yeah, good one.
Yeah,
So,
thank you, Sarah. You actually have expressed my feelings quite well. Thank you so much for it. And just want to add, when I'm doing some trainings, it's much easier because I know that people they came to me with a certain goal to learn this, and they actually are okay with this. But with people who are outside of this thing, outside of what I do as a trainer, I feel I don't feel enough courage yet, but maybe after our meeting I will have it.
Good.
I like Sarah's. A couple of people have mentioned language, and what helps me get over that fear and trepidation is calling an experiment and be willing to fail. I'd like to try this experiment with you. I've never done it with this kind of group of customers and people. Let's go and see what happens. And when I get through that first couple of minutes, things build. And like Sarah described at the end, and like Jurgen described at the end, people are like, wow, if you asked me at the beginning, I would have told you this would have been a colossal waste of time. But now that I've been through it, I can see the value.
Watching those lights go off in people's heads is one of the most rewarding things to me personally, is to see them realize that work should be play and learning should be play, because that's how humans learn, and how much more they've ingrained that versus, the traditional way. It's so cool.
That's a very good point. And as Andy said, it is good to approach people with a message that says, "Hey, I've never done it like this before with you guys. I want to run this experiment. Are you in?" And that is much more inclusive and better language than saying, "Hey, I have this fully prepared game that will change your ideas about this or that." That's not going to work in many cases. And that, of course, that is how traditional games work. They are ready, they're optimized, they work, that has already been tested, and they just need to be implemented with a group of people. But the games that we play, like Lego Serious Play or Moving Motivators, the game is actually a co-creation effort. As I often say in the workshops that I did with my clients, it's just my suggestion to put the cards from left to right and move them up and down. But sometimes people make a circle and say, "Oh, that's so awesome! Let me take a picture of that. You have innovated," or something. And people come up with other suggestions. There was one. Event where people sat in the group with the moving motivated cards, and they gave the least favorite ones to others. They sort of started wheeling and dealing with each other. Who wants to have the power card? Can I have the other card? They turned it into a completely different game, and they had fun and then learned something. And I saw a completely different game emerging with the 10 silly cards that I offered them. And so that was an experiment that they were running, and I think that's a good point. You're not offering something that is finished. You invite them to co-create something, and that is a better language, I think. How about Giovanni? We haven't heard you, guy. What's your experience with games? You're muted.
Giovanni. On the lower left, click the
microphone.
Click the microphone.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Now it works.
Yes.
Usually, I use games during my workshop with my colleagues, and I face with the thinking of the customers about games. That usually they are worried about the word games, and I appreciate the use of experiments or something like this instead of games, because I have seen that games means in the Italian culture something so far from a professional environment or work or no games. Games means something related to time off from work, no? And but I appreciate, for example, the games that I have read on Management 3.0. And probably in the next month or in September, I want to try some games like Happiness Door that I have seen, and it's very linked with our work about happiness. And I think that in general, some experiences is right to name the games and other not. No, I don't know exactly what kind of experience, but something related. For example, I don't remember, but probably Mike before or Katherine has spoken about Lego Serious Play. No, Lego Serious Play that is very famous in Italy. It's a real game. No, for example, like the game with spaghetti in a agile workshop. No, but other games probably are more related with experience or experiment or change culture, or this is my experience. If I understood the topic of the conversation.
Well, I'm sure. I think you got it right, and thank you for your input.
Same here. Thank you so much. And it's good to hear that at least Lego is popular in Italy. Hopefully other games will be popular as well there very, very soon. So, all right. Anyone else has some suggestions about gameplay in a customer, a client environment? Mike?
I mean, the first one is quite interesting. I believe we do not have to name it game. You know, we don't have to give it a name game, but we talk about the context and possibly the objective we want to approach. So what do we want to work upon here? So, and finally, you just drop something in. It's a kind of exercise, and whatever you bring, I mean, it's basically about, you know, holding the space, being a facilitator, because finally you're facilitating somehow, even if it's only 10 minutes, half an hour, or maybe half a day or a full day. And whatever you use, it's always about people trusting you, following you, and so on and so forth. So I think that makes it easier maybe for yourself just to say, just, you know, forget about the name game, but just consider what exercises, and you might also call it experiments if it goes too far, we might use here. The second one might be to say, well, it's people sitting in front of me. Even if they call it customers, they are still people, human beings who have fears, who have trust, who have a kind of desire. So what is it about? You know, it's probably all about, you know, building trust and getting rid of fear. And another one, which comes to my mind all the time during our conversation, we talk about customers versus not customers. Maybe we think about everybody whom we interact with and whom we provide services for, the kind of customer. So if it's people, you know, in our office, colleagues, whoever, somehow they might be also our customers if we offer them services in a professional way. I know there is a difference maybe if somebody offers you also money for it, but maybe get rid of these, you know, types of, you know, thoughts which might be just blocking ourselves, and unblock ourselves by, you know, focusing on what we want to achieve, focusing on what we want to achieve together, and what might bring us together closer to this goal. It's just a few thoughts to, you know, to unfreeze the type of thinking here.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you've unpacked it, putting the focus at there are other people, you know, getting rid of the customer constraint. Another piece that was really beautiful from Giovanni's contribution was the happiness door, and combining that with the expectation that it's an experiment you, Katherine, are conducting, and co-creating the understanding is the feedback you get at the very end by saying, or at the beginning, this is an experiment. I've never done it with you with this kind of situation. And at the end, asking for feedback. How was it? What made you smile? What made you rub your head? Why did we do that? And what made you unhappy? Because that builds the co-creation bond, starts to break down some of the vendor customer, and helps you the next time you run the same experiment with different people, make it a little bit better.
Yeah. Happiness Door. I have read Happiness Door 1 month ago. No, so it's I'm a new buyer of the Happiness Door game, but I appreciated the game because it's like a mirror. No, there is a feedback, but this feedback involves me, that I wrote the feedback on the door, but involves other people that read the feedback, and this something happens, no, in the mind of the people, because they read the feedback, no. But related to the thought of Mike about experiment and game, I think that in my experience, when the professional role goes down, no, and customers in a workshop become a friend or something without a role, no. We involve each other in a workshop, not like chief of manager of it, no, but like Mike, Jurgen. Okay, in that time, probably the experiment or the experience become a games, no, because for me the base for a game is connected with the story of the children, no, or where we are more younger, no, and that's the game, no. And so in a professional environment, when the people leave the role, the experiment became game.
All right.
I like that.
Very nice.
I like it, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that occurred to me, and that's maybe one of the last things to point out, because the time is nearly up, is that gamification is all the rage these days, and it is worth pointing this out to customers and clients, perhaps. Like, you can tell them the huge, hugely successful organizations like Uber and Netflix and Airbnb, etc. They all use gamification in order to experiment with people's behaviors and nudge them in certain directions with ratings and badges and you name it. And that is part of what we see normally as gameplay. It is gamification. We consciously game the system together in order to evolve it to a higher state of usefulness and quality. But it just occurred to me that this is something that we can point out, that the best, most successful and fastest growing companies in the world rely on gamification. So perhaps that is a reason to give a few games a chance. So back to Andy.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And for those watching us, you can see other topics in the Happy Melly Coffee playlist on YouTube, and get more information about Happy Melly at our website, happymelly.com. Until next time, cheers.
Thanks, everyone.